This is the download from Sounds Profitable, your daily source for the essential news in the business of podcasting. I'm Gavin Gaddis. Here's what you need to know for today, Thursday, October 9th. First up, Advertising Week briefing. Amazon is primed to take over the ad industry. I see your pun work, Ronan Shields, and I'm jealous. Advertising Week New York is the focal point of one of the biggest, if not the biggest, reveal in advertising this week. Microsoft's demand-side platform, Microsoft Invest, formerly known as AppNexus or Xandr DSP, is being absorbed into Amazon DSP. As of March 2026, Microsoft will retire their ad-selling division, and their advertisers will be migrated into Amazon's ecosystem. As Shields' reporting notes, it's not just a consolidation of clients, it's a consolidation of inventory control. Between this and deals made with huge streamers, it's feasible that the average Amazon DSP client could reach 80 million connected TV households with just a mix of Amazon-owned inventory and a dash of Roku added in for spice. Next up, the parasocial paradox, why AI podcast hosts might actually work, but not how you think. Recently, Tom Webster set out to answer a question. Given that so much of the trust we have in podcast hosts and in the ads they read is based on parasocial relationships, can we have a parasocial relationship with an AI? Luckily, there's a relevant recent paper published in Computers and Human Behavior, an assistant or a friend, the role of parasocial relationship in human-computer interaction. Subjects in the study form two distinct types of relationships with AI characters: assistant relationships and friend relationships. AI characters that fall into the first group are seen more as competent but less warm, while friend characters are seen as far more warm but also less trusted to be competent. As Webster says, consider the difference in reaction you'd have between asking for a fact check from Siri versus your buddy Chad. A true crime show's host would want robot them to lean more towards friend vibes, while a tech podcast would probably prefer a no-nonsense competent assistant to fit the parasocial vibes of the show. Next up, a conversation with Acast CEO Greg Glenday. I'm back at it with videos again, and I have a doozy for you today. Brian Barletta sat down with newly instated Acast CEO Greg Glenday to have a chat. While there's a lot for the full 20-minute conversation, today I'm just going to focus on one specific part, the openness of podcasting. The lack of centralized algorithmic or platform control over podcasting remains its core strength. A direct relationship between content creators and their audiences that can't exist in television or on social media platforms. As Glenday points out, there's a whole wide world of slang vocabulary constructed specifically because content creators have identified words and topics that get their content flagged on social media. With content creators ultimately owning the distribution and content itself, podcasting operates virtually without borders. Glenday says he loves to see whenever a show from the UK will crack the top 50 podcasts in the US because that doesn't happen in old school media. To which Brian Barletta pointed out, a very real world example, despite its massive success in American markets, even from the 2005 reboot forward, how hard was it to legally watch Doctor Who in the United States for literally decades? Podcasting does not have that problem. Next up, why this channel launched a studio space for creators. Media company Poppy Studios has just debuted a 8,200 square foot studio decked out with a film set, podcast studios, and event space just 20 minutes outside Burbank, near production facilities for YouTube heavyweights like Mythical and Smosh. One of the biggest barriers to entry in the video game is space and gear. Having the ability to rent both is a big step up for podcasters. This also marks a return to the idea of collaborative creator studios that were largely killed off by COVID lockdowns, ranging from the YouTube spaces all around the world that were shut down in 2020 to community-focused approaches like the time in 2018 when Justin McElroy chipped in with a local co-working space to create rentable podcast recording studios in Huntington, West Virginia. And for a final top story, podcasts for lunch, something short and sweet to end out the news. Today's issue of Pod News kicks off with some research from Edison that finds American podcast consumers 13 plus tend to listen to podcasts between 10 and 2 p.m. Cridland also notes that Rajar's Midas study found something similar. The UK podcast audience tends to consume between 12 and 12:30 p.m. As for the rest of the news, Coleman Insights and Women in Media Network are launching a new report called the LGBTQ+ Podcast Consumer Study, a research initiative designed to provide insight into consumer habits, creator challenges, and industry opportunities in the queer podcast ecosystem. Sponsorship opportunities are available for the study. Zeno Media is kicking off Hispanic Heritage Month with a look at Hispanic audio audiences, including their $1.9 trillion in U.S. spending power, 5 hours per week average podcast consumption statistics, and 72% podcast consumption growth since 2020. Evergreen Podcasts has chosen predictive analytics and yield management platform FlightPath to power their monetization and revenue operations across the Evergreen Podcast portfolio. On Air Presents founder and director Scott Newman appears on the latest episode of Your Next Chapter, hosted by Jeremiah Title. And YouTube has a new official blog post giving some beginner tips on how to make engaging video podcast content that works well on YouTube. That'll do it for today's episode as usual. You can find every article I've talked about by clicking the link in your show notes to go to today's episode post on soundsprofitable.com. If you want to go check out any episode of the download, you can go to soundsprofitable.com, mouse over to the download section, and they're all there. You can subscribe to the newsletter while you're there. The download is written and produced by myself, Brian Barletta, and Tom Webster. For Sounds Profitable, I'm Gavin Gaddis, and I'll see you tomorrow morning for the download recap.